Okay, for part two of our series of stories about relationships gone wrong, we have Hills by Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway is a pretty famous writer. He wrote things like For Whom the Bell Tolls, Farewell to Arms, Old Man in the Sea, which I think a bunch of people read in high school. Hemingway was an interesting cat. Like, if you ever saw, like, the most interesting man in the world beer commercials, like the old ones, the guy with the beer, not the new, younger one, I'm pretty sure that was based on Hemingway. Because this dude lived life just to live life. He grabbed life by the, went on hunting on safaris, drove an ambulance during World War One, just ran with the bulls in Pamplona, just lived life to the fullest. He did end up killing himself, unfortunately, but man, he packed a lot of living into those years. And this story, when it first came out, people didn't get it. People kind of hated it. But in the years since, it's one of the most anthologized short stories ever because it was way, way, way ahead of its time. Hemingway had this thing called the iceberg theory, where when you're interacting with a person, talking to them, or even just overhearing conversations, I don't know if you never hear the idea that like something like only like 30% of an iceberg is above the water, like 70%, the main mass, the main heft of it, is below the surface. He thought people kind of operated the same way, that people only saw, through your conversation, through talking, through interacting, even when you sort of really know somebody, you only really know a small percent of them. What's really going on, kind of like with an iceberg, lies beneath the surface. And the best way to understand this story is imagine it's a conversation you're overhearing. They're at a train station, fine, you can say you're at a train station, and you're overhearing this conversation. And what's being said between the American and Jig is only the surface. That's why the discussion question was, what do you think the real problem with the relationship is? It's not the abortion. Everything else is festering below the surface. That's the best way to understand the story. Like, it's told 90% through dialogue, so that's the best way to imagine it. The other thing to understand about this story is the title, Hills Like White Elephants. So how common are white elephants in nature? Not common at all. They're rare. So rare that they used to be given by kings, usually in Southeast Asia, but they used to be given by kings, to other dignitaries, to other important people as presents because they were so rare. So on one hand, a white elephant is a rare gift, something special, something to be treasured. However, if you're in nature, say you're in charge of a herd of elephants, and you got one white elephant in your herd. If Simba and Mufasa are hunting elephants, which elephant do you think they're going to go after first? The white elephant, the one that sticks out, the one that you can really obviously see and can't camouflage in any meaningful way. So, if you are in charge of a herd or a family of elephants, that white elephant is a burden, something you always have to be aware of, something you always have to be looking out for, something you always have to have on your mind. So on one hand, the white elephant could be a treasure, something to be taken care of, something to be valued and is special, or it's a burden that holds you back and weighs you down, and you always have to be aware of. So, do you think they are actually really talking about a white elephant? No. In the context of the story, what is something that could either be viewed as a rare and precious gift or treasure, or something that could weigh you down and be a burden and have to be something you're constantly aware of? They're talking about the baby. To Jig, it's a rare, valuable, special treasure. To the American, it is a burden that you always have to be aware of and is going to hold you back and weigh you down. So that's the symbolism of the title. The other important symbol in the story is where they are. It's literally they're at a train station, but it's not some big major Penn Station, Grand Central Station like train station. It is a switch station or a way station. I think if you get on one train, you head to Barcelona. If you get on the other train, you head to Madrid. So it's like I said, it's a switch station, it's a way station. Basically, if you're at this station, you have to make a choice which way you want to go. So it's an appropriate setting or an appropriate location for a conversation that's very much about a choice. The other thing about the train station, and this is going to come back in a little bit, trust me, weirdly, one side of the train station is full of green hills and rolling rivers and trees and lush and is full of life. The other side of the train station is barren, desert, no life, dry, stagnant. So one side of the train station, one side of the choice is life, the other side is death. And obviously they're making a choice about an abortion, so that's appropriate. And like I said, much of this story is told through dialogue and conversation. So I'm just going to take you through it, and we'll talk about important things that come up here or there. I think I mentioned this in a bunch of people's feedback. Within the first 5 minutes of the story, look how many times Jig is asking the man's guidance. What should we drink? Very first word out of her mouth. What should we drink? Asking to make a choice. The man replies, dos cervezas, which to us today doesn't sound like a big deal. Cerveza is obviously Spanish for beer. Nowadays, that's pretty common knowledge. I mean, you have Corona, Dos Equis. People know cerveza is Spanish for beer. But rewind to when this story was written, early 20th century. Do you think most average Americans knew cerveza was Spanish for beer? Probably not. So think about it for a second. What does that tell you about the American? It tells you that he's well-traveled. Well, can you do much traveling when you have a baby? No, not really, and it's not really the same. So, little detail. Then the girl asks, big ones? Second decision. Yes, big ones, the man replies. And here is Hemingway at his most brilliant. Remember, imagine you're overhearing this conversation. The waitress, they placed the order with the waitress. Yes, 2 big ones. The very next line is, the woman brought 2 glasses of beer and 2 felt pads. So one line they order, the very next line, the drinks arrive. How often have you ordered from a restaurant and drinks arrived instantaneously? That doesn't happen. So imagine again, you're overhearing this conversation. Drinks are ordered, then the very next thing you hear is the drinks arriving. What happened between the Jig and the American in between the time they ordered and the drinks arrived? Remember, you're overhearing, you're listening. They didn't say anything. They sat there in silence. They have something very big they need to talk about, but they sat there in silence. Communication. A couple of you guys said communication is the problem in this relationship. You're not wrong. They're not communicating. And they see a sign for something called Anise del Toro, which is absinthe. Absinthe is liquor infused with wormwood. And trust me, it messes with your head. Just trust me, don't ever touch it. She asked if they can try that, and she asked if she would like it with water. Again, she's constantly seeking this guy's approval, permission, his guidance, his insight. They strike up, but they're talking about the absinthe, and they say it tastes like licorice, which it really does, which is why if you ever have absinthe, it's served, you pour it over a sugar cube, because licorice is bitter, and the sugar kind of neutralizes that. The girl says something like this. Everything tastes of licorice, especially all the things you've waited for so long, like absinthe. Let's talk about jelly beans for a second. If you ever had jelly beans, yeah, you eat the grape ones first, maybe, then the red ones, and maybe the yellow ones. But I guarantee you, 99 times out of 100, the black ones, the licorice ones, are the last ones. Because, let's be honest, they kind of taste terribly. I mean, some people like licorice, I don't get it, but some people do. Basically, what Jig is saying is, sometimes the things you wait for, the things you really, really want, and you look forward to, you're super excited about them, and they end up tasting like licorice. Bitter and disappointing. Think she's really talking about absinthe or licorice? What do you think she's been waiting for, hoping for, looking forward to, and it just turns out bitter and disappointing. Finding a guy? Maybe. Having a baby? Maybe. Both of those? Again, she's talking about absinthe and licorice on the surface, but what's really going on, she's talking about something else. And this is one of the big issues with the relationship. She says something like, "That's all we do, isn't it? Look at things and try drinks." She wants more than that. He's totally fine with that relationship. Like I said in some people's discussion feedback post, they want very different things out of this relationship. Then they actually start talking about the abortion. It's really an awfully simple operation, Jake. Yeah, for him, it's an awfully simple operation. For her, it's invasive and it's a big deal. And she starts asking him, will we be fine afterwards? We'll be fine afterwards, just like we were before. It's the only thing that's bothering us. Like we said, that kind of the discussion post-question. It isn't the only thing that's bothering them. Like, it's not the only problem with the relationship. And then the man says something from Psychological Manipulation 101. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I wouldn't have you do it if you don't want to. Do you think he really means that? No, this is obviously reverse psychology. And she says, I'll do it if you want me to. I don't care about me. That's the problem. I don't care. She doesn't care about her. What do you mean? I don't care about me. Well, I care about you. Oh, yes, but I don't care about me. She doesn't have her own identity. She doesn't have her own self. She doesn't have her own sense of who she is in this relationship. I don't know if she means she actually literally doesn't care about herself, but what she's saying is he is more important than her. And then you get to issue number two of the relationship, sort of. And remember I said one side of the train station is full of life, and the other side of the train station is like barren and dry. She goes over to the life side of the train station, and you have this quick exchange, and if you don't keep track of who's saying what, you get lost in it. So I'm going to read this to you. The girl stood up and walked to the end of the station. Across on the other side were fields of grain and trees along the banks of the Ebro. Far away beyond the river were mountains. The shadow of a cloud moved across the field of grain, and she saw the river through the trees. So she's looking out over the life side, very literally. And she says, and we could have all this, she said. And we could have everything, and every day we make it more possible. That's her talking. The man says, what did you say? She says, I said we could have everything. He replies, we can have everything. She says, no, we can't. He says, we can have the whole world. She says, no, we can't. He says, we can go everywhere. She says, no, we can't. It isn't ours anymore. He says, it's ours. She says, no, it isn't, and once they take it away, you never get it back. He says, but they haven't taken it away. And she says, we'll wait and see. Here's the problem. They both seem like they're talking about having everything, but they mean totally different things. To her, everything is a house, a kid, a dog, a cat, a family, a baby. To him, having everything is the world. Being able to travel and being able to explore, being able to try new things and try new drinks. They seem like they're talking. They're using that word everything. They're using the same word. But to them, it means very, very, very different things. Again, lack of communication. They want very different things out of this relationship. And eventually, she says, can't we maybe stop talking? They sat down at the table, and the girl looked across at the hills on the dry side of the valley, and the man looked at her at the table. She looks out over the death side, the dry and sterile side, and says, can't we stop talking? What happened in that moment? She gave in. She made the decision to have an abortion. And he goes through the motions of saying, you sure you don't have to do it if you don't want to? And she just says, would you please, 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 please stop talking. She's done. She doesn't want to hear it anymore. He won. The man, the American won. She's doing what he wants her to do. And notice where his eyes go right after he realizes he won. He did not say anything, but looked at the bags against the wall of the station. There were labels on them from all the hotels where they had spent nights. Why do you think his eyes go to the travel bag right after he realizes he won? Because that's what he saved. That's what he preserved. By her agreeing to have the abortion, he gets to preserve his life of traveling and going all over the place and trying new things and trying new drinks. Here's a $10,000 question. Since she's having the abortion, is the relationship saved? No. I think the relationship is over. She's always going to resent him. She's always going to feel, even though she did it of her own will, she's going to feel on some level that he manipulated her into it. She's going to have resentment for him, anger for him, hostility for him. From his point of view, I think he's going to feel like he dodged a bullet. He convinced her to have one abortion. If this happens again, I don't think he's going to be able to convince her to do it again. So this relationship, as my sign on the screen says, it's over. Game over. Is he going to leave her the day of the abortion? I don't know. He might be that big an a-hole. But this relationship is not going to last. It's over. It's done. They wanted very, very different things. I mean, you get the impression that he's older than her. I mean, she's younger. So that might be an issue too. But point being, it's a dangerous combination. They want very different things out of the relationship. And she's totally and completely dependent. There's no sense of her own self in this relationship. So that's a dangerous combination. And that is Hills Like White Elephants for you. Thank you.